This episode goes out to Salzler, who left a review on iTunes. We'd happily talk to your family at bedtime. Oh my god, I just heard how creepy that sounds. Hi there, Garrett Robinson here. Welcome to the 31st episode of the Nightblade Epic Podcast, Season 2. Well, y'all, we're almost done. Next week is the last episode of Season 2. Then it's a 6-week break before we return with Season 3 on August 24th. And don't forget to check back for the bonus episode sometime during the break. I have a small personal triumph to tell you about today. By the time you're hearing this, I will have published the last episode of Hellskin, my latest novel of Underrealm, to my Patreon. Now, I still have some work to do on the book. It's time for me to package it all together, edit it some more, and really pull the gold out of the pages before it publishes on Amazon. But if you want to read it sooner in its early draft form, you can. Just go to patreon.com/GarrettB.Robinson and become a supporter. For just $1 a month, you can read the whole thing right now. This is kind of a big deal for me. I can't remember the last time I stayed on task and wrote consistently enough to finish a book like this. And it's really good, y'all. It's really good. I hope you'll go check it out at patreon.com/GarrettB.Robinson. I'm excited. Okay, now it's time for today's episode. Today, you're getting Chapter 41 of Mystic. When we left off, Lauren, Zane, Jordell, and the others had just encountered the second mercenary army, trapping them between thousands of enemies alone on the King's Road. Enjoy! Mystic, Chapter 41. At last I understand, said Jordell quietly, and Lauren looked to him. I knew the sellsword army could not have marched west of the city so quickly, nor grown so great in size in so short a time. That was a second force. This, the army before us, is the one Lauren and I saw upon the King's Road. A second force, said Lauren. How? Whence did they come? From Dorsey, said Jordell. The Dortian commander is clever. He recruited a small army of sellswords in Selvin and marched them across the kingdom, knowing they might be spotted. But they seemed a small threat, and so Wellmont would prepare itself for a mild feint from the north. But in secret, Dorsey mustered a much larger army and marched them across the Dragon's Tail at the feet of the Great Rocks. We thought the sellswords were still more than a day's march out, but the larger army can attack today, when the city will not expect it. Wellmont, breathed Vivian. The city will fall. Lauren could see the pain in her eyes. Mayhap not, said Jordell, for it seems that a great thief single-handedly struck a mighty blow against the mercenaries' strength of horse. That strength rides behind us now, snarled Vivian. And if that host is crippled, I should fear to see them at their full strength. My jest was ill-made, said Jordell, but now we must think of escape. How? Lauren hated her voice for trembling. They are both behind and ahead of us. Let us try the wildlands, said Jem. If they are ungentle, at least they are better than being caught between hammer and anvil. I would not risk it unless at utmost need, muttered Jordell, and yet it seems such need is upon us. Looking behind them towards the pounding hooves, they saw the cavalry come into view from far down the road. As the riders caught sight of the party, they sent up a great cry and spurred their horses to even greater speed. Now they have seen us, cried Annis. They will follow us over the hills and catch us. Zane smirked and nudged his horse to the front of the party. There he dismounted, facing the coming horsemen on foot. Here is your only course. Climb the hills and make for the wildlands, returning to the road only when you know it is safe. I will remain here to deal with these riders." "No, Zane," said Jordell. "You have my respect, and I do not doubt your powers, but they are too much even for you, especially alone. If we fight, it will be together." "I do not need your aid," said Zane. "You may trust me in this, for you have not seen the extent of my power." "You make idle boasts," said Vivian. "I do not think you could stop 100 riders on your own, and 10 times that number now pursue us." Jem scrambled down from Jordell's horse and ran for Lauren's. "Argue if you must until the enemy is upon us and you are all fallen, but I will not wait. Ride now, Lauren. Make for the north while we still can." Lauren seized his hand and pulled him up behind her, but she could not bring herself to spur the horse. Annis looked to her for guidance, but she did not know what to do. Only one thought occupied her mind. She could not leave without the Maidstones. "Come, Zane," said Jordell. "We must try to escape. Later there may be a desperate last stand, but not yet." "A stand I will make, but it shall not be my last." With a dark smile, Zane reached into his coat and from an inner pocket produced a single black crystal. Vivian sucked in a sharp breath and drew back. The other mystics drew their swords. Jordell stared, dumbfounded. Zane swallowed the Maidstone whole. His eyes glowed black. A corona of light shone around him as he raised a hand into the air. Its digits twisted and bent in ways Lauren thought no human fingers should. Then he spoke dark and terrible words, loud and clear. Lauren heard in his voice the power she had heard on the river in Wellmont, but 10 times greater. It struck her in the chest like a hammer blow, and she gasped with the force of it. Jem cried out and gripped Lauren's waist while Annis covered her ears. The mystics recoiled at Zane's words, even Jordell. Bolts of black fire exploded from the sky, raining down to soak the sellswords in flame. "No," whispered Lauren. Zane struck again and again, and each time a fresh wave of horsemen caught alight. The dark fire wrapped around them, catching in their clothes, in their hair, on their skin. They screamed. Their horses pitched to the ground. Some found their feet beating at their own bodies in agony, only to be struck by the riders behind. But when they hit, the flame caught in the horses' coats. They veered left and right, and soon the flame had spread throughout the ranks. Whatever it touched caught instantly, and soon the road had become a river of fire, darker than midnight and hot as the sun. "Stop, Zane!" cried Lauren. Her voice broke, and she found there were tears in her eyes. But Zane kept on, his cries of power growing ever louder as he sent wave upon wave of the black flames surging through the ranks. All thought of attack had gone from the cavalry. Those the flames had not yet reached tried to turn and flee, but their efforts only made it worse, for they jostled and crashed into each other, and with every touch the flames continued to spread. Darkfire rose higher and higher until Lauren could feel its heat even where she stood. Then the last dying cries faded away, and the road was empty. Empty save for the mounds of blackened bodies that lay along it, human and horse both. They were dead, all of them, hundreds of them, dead, and Lauren could find no words for the anguish in her soul. "Abomination!" cried Vivian. She leaped from her horse, and her eyes glowed with magic as she raised her hands. "An eater of the black crystal! I might have known, for you defeated me too easily in our battle upon the river." The other mystics dismounted behind her and formed a line on either side, their blades at the ready. Jordell, too, left his horse, but he stood apart from the others, in between Lauren and Zane. Zane laughed at Vivian, and it was a terrible sound, like some spawn of the darkness below. "I defeated you because you are weak, and a fool besides," he said. "I could best you even without the Maidstones. Do not tell me you hope to win now." "You cannot do this, Zane," said Jordell. "You know what the crystals will do to you, what they do to you even now. I know dark children's stories, told to me in the academy as a mother tells her son of wisps that lurk in the woods. But what I feel, that is another matter. There is greatness within me, the touch of a strength that no discipline could ever provide." "The mage kings of old felt that same power," said Jordell, "and it nearly tore the 9 lands asunder." "Mayhap it should have," snarled Zane, "for then we would not suffer from the plague of red cloaks infesting us now. Tell me truly, Captain of the Mystics, were the Mage Kings outlawed because of their danger, or because they posed a threat to your precious order?" Vivian must have thought him distracted, for in that moment she struck. Her fingers clenched and her fist punched forwards. But if she thought to bind or strike him, she had underestimated his power. Zane swept his hand through the air, and Vivian recoiled as though slapped in the face. Then he spoke a word, held his palms outward, and sent a great wind from his fingers. It slammed into the party and pitched Lauren from her horse. Jem and Annis fell beside her with a cry. The winds kept on, and Lauren found it impossible to stand. When they died at last and Lauren was able to raise her head, she saw Vivian and Zane locked in a mortal struggle. Vivian pushed and pulled, swiped and struck at Zane with the power of her mind, but Zane dashed aside her every attempt. One of the other mystics tried to press the assault, but Zane batted him back with a cone of air, flinging him bodily into the hill behind. Vivian kept stepping towards him, trying to bring him within arm's reach, but Zane had learned that lesson in Wellmont. He stepped back every time she approached, and she could not reach him. At last Vivian gave a frustrated cry, even as she kept up her barrage. "We will never stop hunting you, wizard. You will burn in a pyre for this, like the mage kings of old. Your name will enter the black lists in our hidden halls." "Of course they will never stop," said Zane, calm in the face of her fury. "Once your kind find a wizard using mage stones, they are relentless. It would not do to have a wizard too powerful for you to control. That would not suit the mystics at all." He stepped forwards and unleashed a burst of wind upon her. Vivian and all the mage hunters flew back, cast upon the ground with cries of pain. The wind swept across Lauren. "That is why none of you can leave this place to spread the tale of me," said Zane. "No, Zane!" cried Jordell. He had fallen near Lauren, and now he scrambled to his feet, but Zane ignored him as he stretched forth his hand and unleashed a burst of white-hot flames. It swept forwards across the mystics, consuming them. Lauren cast her gaze away to avoid the sight and protect herself from the blinding glow. She cast her cloak across Jem and Annis beside her, for she feared the heat might sear their flesh. When at last the flames had faded, Lauren forced herself to look. Only blackened and twisted shapes lay on the ground where Vivian and the other mystics had lain. Their horses, too, had burned in the fire, save one or two that had run in terror down the road. But Jordell had escaped. The blast must have thrown him clear, for he lay on his back not far away. Much of his cloak had been burned away and hung in tatters, and he moaned with his eyes closed. She saw a deep burn across one cheek. Zane approached the mystic, eyes glowing black and brows drawn together in anger. No part of Lauren wanted to move, but somehow she found the strength. She jumped up and in front of the wizard, and from her belt she drew the dagger, thrusting it towards him. The wizard stopped a few paces away and smiled at her. "Brave little thief." His deep and unnatural voice echoed in her breast. "Brought to bay saving the life of your master, who loves you no more than any of the other sad wretches he has led to death." "Their doom does not lie on his head," cried Lauren. "You alone brought it upon them. I am a fool to ever have trusted you, and I will regret it until my life's final breath. I spared you when it would have been easier to slit your throat, and 12 times I helped you because somehow I deemed you worthy of the effort. And look what you have wrought. Now hundreds have died by your hand, when I could have let you starve on the King's Road the day we met." "Indeed, you have been foolish," said Zane. "But it seems at last you see the truth of things. This is a world of fire and swords, and sometimes a hard choice must be made." "A hard choice?" said Lauren, pointing at the blackened bodies scattered around them. "What choice did you give them?" "I told them to leave," said Zane, growing angry. "I told you all to leave, and yet you were too foolish. I am done with idiocy. Now step aside, for it is time I ended this chase." "No!" Lauren screamed, and she stepped towards him with the dagger. "Not now, and not ever again. You speak the truth. I have been a fool when it comes to you, but no more. I will end you if I have to, Zane, but you will not harm Jordell." She thought to at least give the wizard pause, but she was disappointed, for he merely laughed loud and long. His eyes glowed a bottomless shade of black, and he muttered a word as he swiped his hand through the air. Lauren braced herself for the impact. Nothing happened. Zane's face twisted in confusion, and Lauren was as shocked as he. But she gave him no time to think, leaping forwards and tackling him to the ground. He twisted beneath her, but he had no skill for fighting. She wrapped an arm around his neck and rolled until he lay on his back atop her. Her hand flashed around, and the dagger came down, its tip pressed against his throat. "Stop, Zane," she cried. "It is over." But Zane would not listen, and he began to thrash in her arms. She had to lift the dagger for fear that he would press his own flesh into it with his wild twisting. Flame leaped into his hand and screamed towards her face, but it turned aside at the last moment to burst on the ground. He formed ice from the air and rained its razor shards upon her, but they melted the moment they touched her skin. Lauren did not understand it, but she had no time to wonder at the wizard's impotence. His struggles grew ever more frantic, and she felt her grip slipping. Again and again she implored him to stop, but he would not listen. He snarled at her, the sound like a wild animal. She had no other choice. He would break free and kill her, or turn his magic on Annis and Jem or Jordell. She had to end it. She raised her hand. The dagger flashed in the sunlight, the black designs on its blade reminding her of the midnight in Zane's eyes. But she could not plunge it into his neck. Though half her mind willed it, the other half screamed at her to stop. Her muscles would not obey. Lauren had held to only one rule since leaving the birchwood, and she could not break it now. Zane froze atop her and hissed between his teeth. She tightened her grip on his throat, but still he managed to mutter, "The dagger." He seized Lauren's wrist, twisting it before she could react. His ferocity and her surprise made Lauren drop the weapon, and it tumbled away across the grass. Then Zane whispered, and his hands on her wrist burned with the strength of an inferno. Lauren heard her own flesh sizzling, and she screamed. Her arm on his throat loosened. Zane rolled away and quickly regained his feet. Grim and terrible he stood, looking down at Lauren, the corners of his mouth twisting in a secret smile. "The dagger," he said. "All this time, from the very day we met, you carried it with you, and yet I never suspected. But how could I? This is a magic I have not heard of." His hand rose, and into it sprung a ball of flame. Lauren could not move. Zane seemed taut as a bowstring, and any provocation might have caused him to unleash his magic. "Still, I know it now," he went on, "and it will be one more tool in my quest. I thank you, Lauren of the family Nelda, for ensuring my success, and for the last time." His hand shot forth, flame arcing through the air towards her. But then Jordell appeared behind him. The mystic's foot shot forth to sweep Zane's legs from beneath him, and the wizard crashed to the ground. His flame guttered out. Jordell kicked him full in the face, and Lauren heard bones break. His body jerked once, and he lay still. The air was quiet. save for the crackling of the still burning corpses. The fight was over. This has been a production of Legacy Books, written and narrated by Garrett Robinson. The music in this podcast was created by Will Musser. Check out his incredible work at willmusser.com. That's WILLMUSSER.com. No secret message today. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.